freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful country of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis plaguing much of the free world, much of the world, incidentally. And this is where we talk about that issue and other issues that are causing us to lose our freedoms. Our freedoms are under assault because when we behave badly and when we behave in poor character, there's always a temptation for government to try and solve the problems that we have stemming from that legislatively, and whenever they do that, that restricts our freedoms. But when people of good character are left alone, when governments let people of good character prosper, they create opportunities for themselves and for others, and they build great societies. So what we really need is not more restrictions on our freedom, not more rules and regulations to live by. What we really need is to make character cool again. And that's been the thrust of my work for the last 25 plus years, almost 30 years. And that's also the reasons for my books, In Sheep's Clothing, The Judas Syndrome, and Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age. Also the reasons for my blog, manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com, a blog dedicated to empowering folks who have been in relationships with disturbed characters of one type or another, and for which I am very grateful. And to those of you listening who are blog readers and commentators and who have been concerned about my health lately, let me explain just a little bit about what's been going on. I had to have a bilateral hernia operation this past week and have been slowly and steadily recovering. It's not that all-invasive a procedure anymore. These days they've got it down to a real science, but it does leave you feeling quite bruised and tender. So unfortunately I've been in a good deal of discomfort. And I am in some tonight, so I hope it won't hinder things. At least I pray that it won't, because we have a lot of important things to talk about on the program tonight. And if you want to join the discussion, I invite you to share your opinions, ask your questions, share your experiences by calling in at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. More than happy to take your call, more than happy to have you join the conversation. This week on my blog, I posted another in a series of articles dedicated to helping to understand and clarify some of the more frequently misunderstood and misused terms in psychology today. And I expanded the discussion a bit on issues related to self-esteem, as well as issues related to the concept of depression and bipolar disorder. And I'll be talking some about all three of these things in the program tonight, leading off with a discussion on self-esteem, which I've talked about many times before on this program, and will tonight. And of course, as always, I welcome your comments and your questions on the topic. Perhaps there's no topic quite as misunderstood as the concept of self-esteem. And if you recall, back in the this will date me somewhat, but back in the late 70s and 80s and early 90s, there was a plethora of self-help books on the market, and many of them dealt with the issue of self-esteem. And if you took all that was written at face value, and if you took all the many things that were written in other books and on many websites at face value, you would think that there was absolutely nothing more important to a person as their self-esteem, and you would also think that there was no such thing as having too much self-esteem. And that's because for a long time, classical theories of psychology were formulated on the premise that whenever you saw what appeared to be a certain degree of ego inflation or an inordinate sense of self-confidence or a grandiose self-appraisal, that most of the time what you were witnessing was in fact a compensation for underlying feelings of insecurity, or perhaps even low self-esteem. So the person who was coming across as either arrogant or haughty or all full of themselves or thinking too highly of themselves was in reality masquerading that kind of bravado and that kind of self-importance to cover the fact and to mask the reality that underneath it all, they felt fairly poorly about themselves. And this was a notion that held sway for a long time. And it led folks to believe that there was just basically no such thing as too much self-esteem. And therefore, many authors and many blog commentators promoted the notion that we all need self-esteem and we all need lots of it, and there's just no such thing as too much of it. Well, I'm here to tell you that people can indeed have too much self-esteem. They can indeed literally think too highly of themselves, unwarrantedly highly of themselves. And their self-esteem does not necessarily have to be predicated on their track record of achievement. There are folks who actually do know a lot and who actually have done a lot, who unfortunately, despite all of the wonderful things that they have done and accomplished, still think more of themselves than they have a just right to think of themselves, or a healthy right to think of themselves. Self-esteem has to do with how we estimate our worth. That's literally what the word means. It literally means to estimate oneself and one's worth and value as a human being. And many times it derives from the intuitive sense we have of what we have going for us. So, as I've written about in all three of my books, In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance and the Judas Syndrome, people who have been naturally gifted with a lot of ability and talent and who have been naturally blessed with good looks or with abilities that endear them to others. They have the gift of gab. They have social facility. They have a certain degree of charm about them. Folks who know that they have an awful lot going for them can come to appraise themselves quite highly, develop a lot of self-confidence, and feel pretty good about themselves. But, you know, there is such a thing as overestimating your value. And even folks who have a lot going for themselves don't necessarily make of themselves all that good of a person. And when they don't have the degree of social conscientiousness, and when they don't have enough care and concern about others, enough empathy for others, enough care and concern about the welfare of the human race, about the planet, about this world we inhabit altogether, when they don't have enough concern about that, and when they only care about themselves and think too highly of themselves to the detriment of others, they can have a sense of self-esteem that's way out of whack. And it's not necessarily compensation for anything. They really do think that they are all that, as the common phrase goes. And this can be very detrimental in relationships. It can really wreak a lot of havoc in relationships. And many times, unfortunately, when you're looking at someone who has that kind of haughty self-image, that grandiose self-image, what you see is what you get. It's not really a compensation for anything. It's who they are, unfortunately, who they are. All too many people have made the mistake, I'm afraid, of buying into those old notions that the haughtiness or the grandiosity that they witnessed in a prospective relationship partner was a compensation for underlying feelings of insecurity. And so buying into that notion, they hooked up with this person only to discover later that this person was so full of themselves and so concerned with themselves and so highly thinking of themselves that they didn't have much room in their hearts for concern about anybody else. And the relationship partner only realized this when it was too late in the relationship. So I've unfortunately experienced this all too many times. So on the blog, on the Manipulative-People blog this past Friday, I posted a follow-up article to a series of articles that I've been doing on commonly misunderstood concepts, and self-esteem being one of them, and further explained my thoughts and my position on this very important dimension of human personality. A person can indeed think too highly of themselves, and even persons with realistically valuable contributions to society and who have made great achievements and accomplishments, even those folks can think of themselves too highly, can overrate themselves in their degree of importance, just as folks who don't have much of a track record and who have nothing to show for themselves can overly rate themselves. It really has very little to do with one's just treatments. It has to do with the soundness of one's self-appraisal. And when one's self-esteem is inflated, it's toxic to a relationship and it's detrimental to a person's character, no matter whether they have had some reasonable achievements in their life or made some good contributions to society. That matters little. What matters is that they get the balance right with respect to judging their real worth and their real value as a human being. Others have value too. And there are such things as fortuitous circumstances in life. In other words, even though we have every right to stroke ourselves for our legitimate efforts to achieve certain things and to make certain contributions, there are always those fortuitous circumstances that come our way that help enable us to achieve those goals. There are some folks who are not blessed with a lot of talent or with a lot of intelligence and are not blessed with the good fortune of coming out of an environment in where they were afforded the same kinds of opportunities as other folks have. So they're at a disadvantage in life, and while they have every right to give themselves one well-deserved pat on the back for every effort they make to make of themselves a decent person and to make a good contribution, we also have to respect the fact that many times our achievements don't come solely because of our efforts. They come with the help and assistance of others many times. They come with the grace of fortuitous circumstance, and they come with a fair degree of luck sometimes. Just happenstance. Luck of the draw. Chance. Sometimes. So you can't rule those things out. And it's really hard for me to imagine that the truly grateful person, the person both grateful for their gifts and grateful for their opportunities. I'll repeat that again. It's hard for me to imagine that the person both grateful for their gifts and grateful for their opportunities. Hard for me to imagine that such a person would be a boastful, grandiose, or conceited, or vain individual. So it's a question of balance. Too little self-esteem, very bad, very detrimental to our character formation. Too much, too grandiose a self-appraisal, too much of a discount of all that we have been given to make things possible in our lives. Too much ingratitude and too much grandiose self-appraisal, toxic also to our character. And character, good character, is what it's all about. There's nothing more important to our families, to ourselves, to our society, to our culture, to our world. Each one of us has it within our power to change the world, starting with you know who, us. I love that song, Man in the Mirror. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. Change his ways. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. That's how the lyrics of the song go. Fits very nicely with the topic we're talking about tonight, doesn't it? Some of you might not agree with me. Some of you may. Some of you may have a prime example of this. Maybe you know somebody who you made the mistake of thinking was merely compensating for feelings of insecurity when they displayed that vanity and that conceit early on in a relationship, only to learn later that they weren't compensating for anything at all, and that's really who they were. And maybe you realized the toxic effects of that grandiose self-appraisal of theirs. Maybe you realized it only too late. Maybe you have a question to ask. Maybe you have a story to share. In any case, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Love to take your call and love to have you join the conversation. Also in the article this past Friday, I expanded just a little bit on a discussion that I've had earlier on the blog and in previous articles on the distinction that I make between self-esteem and self-respect. You know, the word respect is a somewhat difficult one to understand. Also, it literally comes from the Latin words meaning to look again. That's the spectere part. That's where we get spectacles from and retrospective. Literally means to look again or to look back. That's where we get the word retrospective. That more literally means to look backward. But the word respect, and especially self-respect, has to do with looking back upon or looking again upon all those things that we have done with the blessings and gifts that we have been afforded. How have we led our lives? How have we conducted ourselves? What kinds of contributions have we made? How have we related to others? In what manner have we tried to contribute to solving the world's problems as opposed to fostering them? How honest have we been in our dealings? How forthright have we been in our communications? How caring have we been in our relationships? These are the things that deserve respect. Now, some of you may disagree with this, but because we, as I see it, because we live in an age of such rampant entitlement, because there are so many entitlement messages promoted in modern culture, all too many folks grow up believing that they are entitled to not only respect, but to all of the valuable commodities of life that rightfully need to be earned. I'll repeat that. All too many folks in our age of entitlement grow up to believe that they are entitled to all of the most valuable commodities in life, including those things such as respect, things that rightfully need to be earned. Now, let me be clear. All of us have a right, all of us have a right to be treated in a civil and humane fashion. Being civil And being humane is not the same as affording respect, even to oneself. Remember, respect means to look again, to look upon, or to look back upon what you have done with what you have been given. And there are folks who have made wonderful contributions and who have made of themselves the kinds of persons of such noble character that they warrant our respect. They have truly earned it. One of the things that I experienced when I was doing work among some of the most severely character-impaired individuals we have in our country, working and setting up groups and treatment programs and assessment programs in the prison system. One of the things I encountered very frequently was this mentality that demanded respect as an entitlement. And I would have to say, without any doubt in my mind, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there's, I looked at it so carefully and in dealing with many, many individuals, hundreds, thousands of individuals, and having them attest to this same thing eventually as they worked through their issues, I can say with certainty that that mentality of entitlement and that demand for what rightfully need be earned was probably one of the principal reasons why these individuals found themselves where they did. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about it. And hundreds of thousands of these individuals attested to that after coming to see it for themselves. I'm not sure that there is anything quite as destructive to human character formation as the entitlement culture that we live in. We take so much for granted. We take our resources for granted. We take each other for granted. We take our good fortune for granted. We take our very lives for granted. We take our quality of life for granted. We are, in many respects, an ungrateful lot. And we're coming into that time of the year, where we are in that time of year, when all of our minds are supposed to be turning to those loftier things, those inspiring messages that we all need to truly survive and prosper. And so I would ask you out there listening tonight to really be mindful of what we have and what we have to be grateful for. Gratitude is the perfect antidote for this massive sense of entitlement that's gotten us into so much trouble. And when we're grateful, this is key. When we are grateful, and when we do not expect to have things handed to us, when we do not feel entitled, when we feel grateful, we necessarily come to feel also obliged. Obliged to do what? Obliged to do our part. to make a contribution. None of this works without our help. None of it. And it only works as good as the sum total of each of our individual contributions. It only works that well. One of the reasons it's not working all that well right now is that many of those of us who have been carrying the burden dutifully to make those contributions are getting weary. Folks look around and they witness the entitlement generation. And they witness all those who have totally abdicated any sense of responsibility. And they witness those who in anger and hostility and in envy demand what they very well could earn. And they become weary. And they basically say, well, the heck with it. I'll just take my share like everybody else, do what I can to enrich myself, and let the rest be. We've grown a bit weary of the oppressive burden placed on those who have been carrying society basically on its back, on their backs. We have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of statutes on the books in this country. It's laugh out loud funny, absurd, that we've felt the need to do this, to behave in a civil way. Where at one time, and there was a time, people think this is fiction. It's not fiction. There was a time when a handshake was good. And in fact, there are still times, there are still people whose word is solid. They're few and far between, but they're still there. There are people of character among us. People who have a balanced sense of their worth, who certainly don't consider themselves insignificant, but also don't falsely appraise themselves. And they also don't feel entitled to anything that they don't truly earn. They're the unsung heroes among us who make this whole thing work. You don't hear about them very often. They go to work, they pay their bills, they do their thing, they make their contribution. And for the most part, they don't gripe. But they're getting weary. Why? Because the sense of entitlement in our culture is so massive. And there are so many self-serving, grandiose, haughty, entitled, self-centered individuals among us these days that it makes life not quite the joy that it used to be. And because these individuals do things that harm us, there's a constant invitation for government to try and solve the problem by imposing more rules and regulations on all of us. This will not fix it. Will not fix our problem. Nor can I, by myself, do anything but work on my own issues and try to be the best person I can be. And perhaps along the way, inspire others to do the same. And that's been the thrust of my work. And it's at this time of the year that I get more grateful than ever about the response to my work. I know it may seem like a fair degree of shameless self-promotion here, but once again this year will be a banner year for all three of my written works. And it will be also another year where my first book, In Sheep's Clothing, will have been published in 4 more foreign languages. This has been an unprecedented journey for me of over 17 years. And I couldn't be more pleased. My purpose at the outset was to inspire folks, to help empower folks, and to at least call attention to what I consider to be the defining issue of our time. Each one of you that listens to both the beginning and the close of this program knows that it opens with a patriotic song that was of my wife and my composition. It was the first piece of music that I had composed. I'd composed lyrics before, but no music before this one. Back in 1999. Actually, it was composed in 1998, copyrighted in 99. And I was moved to do so at the turn of the new millennia because I'd come to believe that the greatness of our country was eroding, and I really felt the urge to inspire people to help make it great again. And I truly believed in what John Adams said when he and others were working on the Constitution of the United States of America. He said, this whole thing is just not going to work unless we have a religious and moral people. The Constitution is written for such a people. In the absence of strong morality and religious conviction, it probably won't work, because it wants to ensure the maximum freedom of the individual. And when people of good character, people of very solid values, when they are left alone, when government gets out of their way, when they're afforded the greatest degree of freedom that they can possibly have, they do wonderful things. And not only do they do wonderful things for themselves, but they create opportunities for others and help make the world a better place for others. So here was this grand experiment, affording maximum freedom to people of character and letting them run with it. And building a great society would be the result. Now, we haven't always been a people to live up to that. We've had some really dark days in our time. And even some of our noblest characters have had their Achilles heels. We've had some things to be truly ashamed of. We've had our dark days of slavery, of human rights injustices. We even went to war with each other over the clash in our values. We've had periods of rampant crime. We've had periods where we didn't much care about one another. and people starved unnecessarily. People were victimized in many ways unnecessarily. So we've had our character flaws, to be sure. But we have also had our moments of greatness. And whenever we have, it's always been due to the fact that we have managed to forge a decent character. That's what great societies are built on. And what we think about ourselves matters. How we assess ourselves, how we appraise ourselves, how we assess our values, to what we attribute our successes and failures. It matters. Sometimes we are absolutely right to attribute success solely to our own efforts. Sometimes we're right to attribute our failures solely to our own defects of character. But sometimes other factors are present as well. And if we get the balance right, if we esteem ourselves properly, then we have a chance at forging the kind of character that will not only make us the kinds of persons worthy of respect, but will also help build the kind of society that we all want to live in. Or that I should say that most of us want to live in. I don't know about all. Once again, if you want to join the conversation, if you have a comment or a question or want to share something, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Be happy to take your call. So that's just about all I wanted to say about self-esteem for tonight. I've really written about it several times, and not only in all three of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, and the Judas Syndrome, but I've posted several articles on the topic on the manipulative-people.com blog, and also on the counselingresource.com blog. That's counseling with 2 L's resource.com. I think you'll probably find more than a dozen articles on self-esteem, self-respect, and also on the issue of merit, which is a related concept. So you'll find some articles that I've written on that, and you'll probably also find many comments from the readers and many experiences shared by the readers to each of those articles that should help clarify for you and maybe help you in your own internal deliberations about just what this whole self-esteem issue is all about and what it rightfully needs to be about if somebody's to get it right in their character development. So I invite you to do a little search on the blogs and research those articles. I hope you'll find them of value. But that's not the only topic that I covered in this past week's post. It was just one of the more talked about things that I posted on the blog this past week. I did talk about depression also, and making some clarifications about what it is and what it isn't. So I wanted to talk about that just a little bit too. Depression is a very distinct and unique illness. When people are truly clinically depressed, their biochemistry has changed in a manner that doesn't permit them to either see things accurately anymore or make judgments well anymore, or to have the kind of hope, affect, and response to the world that will enable them to function well. It's a real biochemically based illness that oftentimes requires biochemical intervention, medical intervention, to correct. The research is pretty clear that because one's thinking becomes pretty distorted in depressive episodes, that good cognitive behavioral therapy focused on addressing the kinds of distorted cognitions that occur, the kind of distorted thoughts that people have when they are depressed, challenging those thoughts, changing those thoughts, is also very instrumental to overcoming a depressive episode. But one thing that depression is not. Depression is not the unhappiness, the normal degree of unpleasantness and unhappiness that we experience when something goes badly, or when something something upsetting happens to us. We're not supposed to respond with joy when unfortunate things or bad things happen. Sometimes when bad things happen, we get angry. Sometimes when disappointing things occur, we get despondent. This is a normal and, in most cases, actually a healthy reaction. True depression goes beyond this. And one of the dangers that I have seen over the years in being too quick to throw the label depression on a person's unhappiness, and being too quick to resort to strictly medically based interventions as a way of rectifying that, is that a person perhaps is enabled in some way to avoid dealing with, in an effective way, the situations that are inviting them to be despondent. Many times, when we're being negatively impacted by a circumstance, it's nature's way of telling us something is wrong here and warrants our attention. We need to pay some mindful heed to what's going on here and make some course corrections in our lives. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be a bit miserable. That's what nature is trying to tell us. And so what can happen is if a person takes a pill to feel better in those kinds of circumstances and then continues to ignore whatever bad circumstances occurring in their life, things only become worse, and it will take higher and higher and higher levels of despondency or unhappiness before things kind of cave in and before stressors mount to the point that a person has to reckon with things. And by that time, many times it's really too late. And the situation is much worse than it could have been if a person had paid attention to it earlier on. So I wanted to make the point in the blog post of this past Friday that not every bout of unhappiness is depression. And when we are despondent over a disappointing circumstance, when we're having a normal degree of unhappiness about our circumstance, perhaps we're in a relationship in which we are being treated poorly, And we've come to appreciate at some level, perhaps at an unconscious level or at a gut level, that the person that we hooked up with was not quite the person that we thought at first. That we were in some way deluded. We were mistaken. We made a misjudgment of their character. And now we're dealing with the reality of the situation. And we have to grieve, basically, the loss of what could have been. And we have to grieve the situation that we find ourselves in. If we don't do that, if we don't pay attention to that despondency, if we don't do that grieving, if we don't sort through those issues, if we don't pay attention to what nature is telling us about the reality of our circumstances, then we dig a deeper emotional hole for ourselves. We dig a deeper situational hole for ourselves. We make a bad problem even worse. And we might really invite a true depression eventually. So I think it's unfortunate. You know, we live in such an age of not just entitlement, but we live in an age where we take so much for granted and where we are such creatures of comfort, and we want such instantaneous relief that whenever we feel badly, many times we seek relief the quickest and easiest way possible. When sometimes the pain that we're having, sometimes it could be of a constructive nature, having something to teach us if we pay attention to it. So I wanted to make that distinction. Not all unhappy feelings are depression. Not all disappointment in the face of disappointing circumstances is depression. And sometimes it's not in our best interest to rush to the family physician and beg for a pep-me-up pill, especially when we're in a circumstance that is telling us basically, you need to make a course correction here, or you're going to continue to be miserable. If we're in one of those circumstances and we take a chill pill or we take a pick-me-up pill and we feel better and then we remain in that situation, we're only promoting our long-term ill health. So I wanted to make that point, and that's what I did in the blog. I don't know how many of you have had a similar experience or have an example to share. Maybe you do. If you do, the number to call, again, is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I do want to take some time to thank all the people who wrote me and who sent me emails and who made comments on the blog wishing me a recovery and expressing their kind sentiments. I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, I had to have some surgery this past week. I had two rather large hernias that needed to be repaired. They were so large and acting up so often that life got to be pretty much a pain, and something had to be done. And because these were fairly large and because the effort to correct them was of necessity pretty complicated, even though it was done in the least invasive way possible. My recovery has been pretty slow, and I've been in a lot of discomfort. I've been in some discomfort tonight, but it's always such a pleasure to be here, and it's always such a joy to do this program that it really kind of took my mind off it a little bit to do the program tonight. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity to do so. But I would be remiss if I didn't say a sincere and warm thank you to all of you who took the time and made the effort to contact me directly in some way and express your condolences and express your concern and to wish me well in my recovery. I appreciate it very much, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the kind words. And I'm going to be continuing the series on my blog at manipulative-people.com on commonly misunderstood and misused psychological terms and concepts. I'm going to be continuing that for some time to come. At least the next 5 or 6 articles will be in a similar vein, covering topics that people have asked me to cover. You can always email me or suggest some things for me to cover as well on the blog, and I'm happy to do so. And so I invite you to pay a visit to manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. To my other blog that I write for at counseling with 2 L's resource.com. That's www.counselingresource.com. And to purchase and to recommend also my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, and the Judas Syndrome, as I do my best to carry the message about the importance of character and about doing our part, each one of us, to make this world a better place and rebuilding the greatness of our society. This can be and has been at times a truly great country. And it's great primarily when we are great and noble in character. So that's what we need to commit ourselves to. That's what we need to encourage one another to do, to inspire one another to do. That's what I've tried to inspire through my work. That's what I try to inspire with the song that you hear at the beginning and at the end of our program. And that's what I'll continue to do in my blog articles over the coming weeks and on this program. Because, as the title of this program suggests, character does indeed matter. It matters perhaps more than anything else. We'll have prosperity, true prosperity again. We'll have true quality of life again. We'll have a culture we can be proud of again. We will have achievements that we can be proud of again. We'll have all of that again when we are individually and collectively of the character that we can be and have been at points in our time. We haven't always been great, but there have been shining moments. And it's always when we have stepped up and been of good character. So take care, and I'll see you again next week.